It was past midnight when Adam's car sputtered to a stop in the middle of nowhere. The winding road through the forest had grown increasingly narrow, branches casting twisted shadows on the cracked windshield. The engine had finally given up, and he was alone, stranded in the woods. He checked his phone. No signal. He'd been on the way back from visiting a friend, taking a shortcut he wasn't very familiar with, but that had seemed harmless enough at the time. Now there was no one around, not a single house for miles. He had two options: stay in the car until morning or try to make his way back to the main road on foot. He grabbed a flashlight from his glove compartment, resolved to find a signal somewhere along the road. The air was thick and silent as he stepped out, save for the occasional rustling of leaves in the breeze. Every crack of a twig, every whisper of wind made him tense. As he walked along the dark road, a peculiar smell filled the air, a damp metallic scent that grew stronger with each step. His instincts prickled, but he pushed on, determined to reach safety. Minutes passed, and he stopped to catch his breath. The silence around him was unnerving, like the whole forest was holding its breath, waiting. That was when he heard it, a low guttural growl that rumbled from the trees beside the road. Adam froze, the flashlight shaking in his grip as he swung it toward the sound. His heart pounded, each beat louder than the last, drowning out any rational thought. He'd heard stories about bears in the area, but this sounded different. More deliberate, closer. The underbrush rustled, and Adam strained his eyes to see. The beam of his flashlight landed on something low to the ground, hidden in the shadows. Then two eyes glowed back at him, a sickly yellow, unblinking, and too high off the ground to be any ordinary animal. A shape emerged from the trees, hulking and grotesque. It was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Its limbs were twisted and elongated, patches of matted fur clung to its scaly, gray skin, and its face, it was wrong. The mouth was stretched unnaturally wide, filled with jagged teeth that gleamed in the flashlight's beam, dripping with what looked like blood. Adam stumbled back, unable to take his eyes off the creature as it slunk forward, its movements disturbingly slow and calculated. It let out another guttural growl, a sound that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. He had to run. But just as he turned, the creature lunged. He felt something sharp scrape against his arm, and he cried out, stumbling onto the dirt path. He could hear it breathing, a sickening wet sound, as it moved closer, savoring each step. Panic seized him. He scrambled to his feet and bolted into the woods, the flashlight bouncing in his hand, casting erratic beams of light across the trees. The forest was thick, branches clawing at his face and clothes as he stumbled blindly forward. He could hear the creature following, each heavy footfall drawing closer. His breath was ragged, heart thundering as he tripped and fell, twisting his ankle. He bit back a scream, hobbling forward, half-crawling, his only goal to put as much distance between himself and that thing as possible. He ducked behind a large tree, pressing himself against the rough bark, clutching his injured leg. His hand moved instinctively to his phone. He checked again, still no signal. Desperation clawed at him as he heard the creature approach, the slow crunch of leaves as it searched for him, sniffing the air like a bloodhound. He dared not move, barely even breathing, as he watched it through a small gap between the branches. It was only a few feet away now, sniffing at the ground, its long bony fingers brushing against the earth as it prowled. Its face twitched, the skin stretched so tightly over its skull that he could see every bone and tendon. It was almost human, but twisted, corrupted. Its eyes, those sickly yellow eyes, scanned the darkness with a cold intelligence, an unnatural hunger. Suddenly, it stopped, lifting its head as if sensing something. For a horrifying moment, it turned, looking directly in his direction. Adam's heart hammered so loudly he was sure it would hear him. He clenched his jaw, waiting, praying. The creature let out a low hiss and slowly backed away, disappearing into the shadows of the trees. Adam waited, his entire body trembling, before he dared to move. The silence returned, heavy and unsettling, and he was almost ready to believe it was gone. But as he took a cautious step forward, he saw something out of the corner of his eye, movement, a flash of yellow. The creature was there, waiting in the dark, grinning that horrible, toothy grin. It had never left. It was toying with him, watching him, savoring his fear. It took a step toward him, and Adam's courage shattered. He turned and ran, his injured leg barely able to support him, his screams swallowed by the endless dark. He didn't know how long he ran, how many times he fell, or how close it was behind him. All he knew was the overwhelming terror driving him forward. Finally, he saw the faint outline of his car in the distance, a beacon of hope. He forced himself onward, ignoring the searing pain in his leg, the burning in his lungs. Reaching the car, he fumbled for his keys, throwing himself inside and locking the doors. For a moment, there was silence. He let out a shaky breath, his hands gripping the steering wheel, eyes darting around, searching for any sign of movement outside. Then, a sharp thud against the car's rear window. He turned, and there it was, the creature, its face pressed against the glass, grinning, its teeth scraping against the window as it watched him, savoring his helplessness. With a desperate burst of energy, Adam turned the key, and miraculously, the car sputtered to life. He floored the accelerator, speeding away down the narrow road, heart pounding. In his rearview mirror, he saw the creature standing in the road, watching as he escaped, its yellow eyes burning through the darkness, as if promising they would meet again. To this day, Adam refuses to drive anywhere near those woods. He doesn't talk about what happened, but sometimes, late at night, he swears he can still see those eyes, glowing from the edge of the trees, waiting.